Started. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. We're excited about the content we've prepared. Today we'll be talking about how digital blueprints amplify and accelerate your ability to design, deliver, and manage RPA at scale. Some housekeeping notes before we jump into the presentation. You can pop any questions into that question tab on the right. And we'll be answering them at the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions as we're going through, just pop them in there and we'll get to them at the end. Please also check out the handout section of the control panel for a great resource on this topic. The webinar should run around 45 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions afterwards. And I'd love to now introduce you to our speaker. Today we have Matthew Dodgson. He is the head of Global Solution Engineering at Blueprint Software Systems. Matt, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Bruna, and thank you everyone for joining today. So, as Bruna mentioned, my name is Matthew Dodgson. I head up the solution engineering group here at Blueprint globally, and that means I support the delivery of Blueprint's enterprise automation platform, which is the modern and intuitive solution we're going to show you guys today for scaling automation initiatives at your enterprise. And I support these deliveries across our different organizations, the different customers today. And what we really want to show you is, as an organization, how we're passionate about helping teams rapidly optimize, automate, and digitally transform their organizations. And I'm really excited today to walk you through, how we can eliminate the antiquated software design practices from your RPA workflow, so you can ultimately design and deliver your digital workers quicker and much easier. So before we get started, I want to frame everything we're going to be talking to you today about. So I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about Blueprint and what it is that we do. Then we'll get right into today's topic and explore the current challenges RPA programs are facing. We'll talk about where those challenges come from, and more importantly, how Blueprint is going to remove those barriers to really enable faster, higher quality automation delivery. And for that, I'll be leading you through a demo on how to import captured processes into Blueprint, how to optimize those processes before converting them into a digital blueprint, how to export and sync your digital blueprint into your RPA tool that you use to drive your precise high quality development. And ultimately, and then I'll show you how Blueprint is going to provide the change management and governance capabilities that you need to continually add value to your bot ecosystem and increase your ROI at your organization. So starting off, I'd like to give you a little bit more context about Blueprint. At a high level, Blueprint is a leading provider of digital process design and management solutions for Fortune 1000 organizations. Global leaders from every industry are using our cloud-based platform, the Enterprise Automation Suite, in tandem with their RPA platforms to help them identify, design, and manage high-value automations with the precision and ease they need by creating what we call digital blueprints. Now, creating a digital blueprint replaces the need to create time-consuming, error-prone documents, like the PDD, for example. And it drives both quality and efficiency at numerous points along the automation workflow. This is exactly what we'll be getting into today. This enables our customers to spend less time designing, managing, or fixing automations, and more time on things that directly grow their business. So let's jump into today's topic. We're going to get started by diving into the most pressing challenges RPA programs are facing. When RPA first came about, it was positioned as a self-contained solve-all for business inefficiencies. And it was so simple that companies could even provide a bot for every worker. But rolling out and maintaining an army of bots is actually a tremendous challenge. And too often, the industry doesn't acknowledge the realities of this challenge. Because of these glossed over challenges, over 50% of RPA projects fail to meet their objectives, while 25% of companies have not even achieved the break-even point or returned enough hours to the company to pay for their initial RPA investment. But why? What's going wrong? Why is this happening? As organizations race to automate more and more processes, they're hitting a wall. Missed requirements and poorly designed processes are leading to low quality automations that need consistent maintenance. And these tedious and expensive changes and fixes are highly reactive, which means that the bot downtime is leading to diminishing returns and business value. Basically, you spend all your time fixing bots and not building bots. And this is resulting in an inability to really scale your automation initiatives because you're too busy putting out fires all the time. So before we go any further, we're going to do a quick pulse check to understand where everyone is currently on their RPA journey. Now, Bruna is going to be so generous as to start the poll for everyone, and I'd love for you guys to give us your input. And really, what we want to understand is, where you are in automation. If you're piloting RPA at your organization, you have on the scale of 1 to 10 bots, where RPA has been implemented at your organization. So maybe you're in the 11 to 50 robot or process range, or you've actually begun to scale up RPA at your organization, 50 plus, or at the end of the day, you're not really sure. We'll give you guys a minute there to just provide us some feedback, because what we've seen is very interesting in that the industry is very hot on how RPA is going to bring tremendous value to organizations. But the challenge remains that organizations are having a hard time actually getting it in and getting it going. And so you notice here that a lot of these polls really start at the beginning part of RPA. And that's telling of where a lot of organizations are kind of sitting today. All right. Now I'm just watching as some of the numbers come in here. Perfect. So we just took a quick poll, and obviously a large chunk of you aren't really sure. But some of you have started to scale out. Some of you are looking at, actually beginning to scale up automation at your organization. And then, as expected, there's a percentage of, there's a percentage of you piloted RPA, but you're not sure, as well as the RPA, has been implemented at the organization. Yep, you can see that there. So you can feel free to look at the poll results there. So where does this take us? Well, while RPA is unquestionably helping many organizations drive digital transformation, in too many cases, customers are struggling to scale their programs. They're at that scaling point, and they're trying to really get that scale going, and to achieve ultimately the value they anticipated. At Blueprint, we believe the root cause is that today's RPA workflow is fundamentally broken and inefficient due to the industry best practice of using documents, particularly things like PDDs. And they're using these to define and design automations. We've long believed that documents are a terrible medium for software design of any kind. And when it comes to automation design via document, it's invariably time consuming and error prone. It's manual, and it just keeps information separated. These errors and gaps ultimately lead to these brittle bots and endless break fix cycles. And that's failed ROI that really prevents the customers from achieving the value they anticipated and scaling their programs out to what they need and to what the management and the organization has actually expected. Quality automation design is much more than just getting the process right. But perhaps not surprisingly, many folks struggle with this most basic component. And despite increasing adoption, process discovery tools haven't proven to be the answer, as they rarely provide the level of accuracy needed. Even if the discovery tools worked perfectly, there are so many dependencies and other mandates that are critical design attributes that really require the engagement of true subject matter expertise. They have to get the humans involved to actually tell us how to put this process in the context of business decisions. Issues like regulations and compliance requirements, security, data policies, and understanding the layers of technology that every automation is absolutely dependent on simply aren't discoverable by any tool or technology. And ironically, in every situation, when you have tooling throughout discovery and tooling on the RPA, you're still using documents. So this cascade of dependencies and critical design information is rarely captured in these documents or in a document, because the documents are not an effective medium for collaboration and communication. In fact, they promote the opposite. They silo information and most often reflect just a single point of view, and they simplify things to the point that they don't have enough detail. These challenges are made worse by the fact that when these poorly designed bots inevitably break, companies struggle to effectively manage the changes. They have trouble quickly and effectively identifying which bots are broken, why, and how to resolve the issue, which leads to increased bot downtime. All these design issues result in companies spending all the time putting out fires and fixing bots they've already built, resulting in installing the automation pipelines and diminishing the business value from their RPA initiatives. So let's do another quick poll here to see which of these challenges are impacting the people or your folks here the most. So Brune, if you wouldn't mind starting the next poll. So what has been the greatest challenge for you in producing high quality automations? Whether it's collaborating with stakeholders, sufficiently understanding and documenting the process, ensuring you actually have governance over the process, whether it's errors due to the real manual approaches for RPA design, or lastly, it's just understanding and responding to the impact of change after automations go live. How do you maintain them? How do you manage them? Give everyone a moment here to weigh in. All right. Appreciate that. I can see the votes streaming in here, so I appreciate you guys sharing some information. So, what we're seeing, and feel free to look at the results here, but obviously, a lot of folks are in this camp of, really understanding and documenting processes and their dependencies, or ensuring the proper governance with, some obviously around the collaboration. So it fundamentally falls in this group of just understanding what we do. So if all of these design issues result in companies like yours having to spend all of the time putting out the fires, fixing bots you've already built, or understanding how these bots work so you can maintain them. And this is what cuts into our ability to deliver more. So with all of these challenges that we talked about in these first few minutes, what's the solution? How do we get past this? And this is where Blueprint comes in. Now, global leaders, as we mentioned, across industries are increasingly adopting Blueprint's enterprise automation suite to identify, design, deliver, and manage these automations in order to scale the scope and impact of their RPA programs. At the heart of the platform is what we call a digital blueprint. And digital blueprints are much more than just process models. They contain everything you need to efficiently and effectively deliver these automations, including the detailed process flows, all the dependencies, the system's compliance regulations, requirements, user stories, test cases, and specific implementation details. And they're all directly integrated then into your RPA platform. So using the Blueprint platform and our digital blueprints has many benefits, including having all of this information, all these assets and stakeholders in one central platform, which ultimately streamlines the workflow and improves alignment. Think about what we do today. We work on documents, a unique document for every single project, every single program. And as soon as that document is done, somebody starts building, and then when they're done building, the document gets filed away and it never gets looked at again. It never gets updated. And in most cases, it's basically all of that work went into creating that document and then it was lost. Blueprint celebrates all this information and it keeps it centralized so we can reuse it and it becomes something that everyone can access. And more importantly, Blueprint has built-in intelligence that helps you model these future designs off of all this information. And it integrates with all of this, really making a faster and easier design and build process to really bring these automations to life. And ultimately, it improves the quality of your processes. And lastly, the enterprise analytics and dashboarding in Blueprint helps you prioritize and measure what's working and really manage that change proactively to sharpen and scale your strategy across the organization. Now, building automations with digital blueprints is a state-of-the-art way to achieve RPA success. The system is purpose-built to design automations in an easy, simple, and understandable way. As you can see here, identifying systems and actions and parameters for any given automation task doesn't require technical expertise and is accessible to the business user. So as you enter things here in Blueprint on the left-hand side, all of that is eventually going to translate directly into the RPA platforms. And that's what makes it so powerful, is the clear superiority of digital design over documents. It is being able to capture all that once and then transfer it directly into whatever RPA program, RPA platform you're using today to accelerate your development and reduce the introduction of error and manual intervention and manual problems and manual challenges into the equation. The ease and simplicity of digital blueprints will allow citizen designers to more readily drive your automation pipelines and scale RPA programs, and ultimately even grow to this citizen developer movement that we start to see across the organization, or across the industry, should I say. What makes all this possible is something we call our common object model, or as we call it, just COM. It provides an ever-increasing catalog of services that on the back end help us map these common commands and applications across all the different RPA platforms. All of these services and their specific actions and parameters are mapped directly into your automation development environment through our bidirectional connections with AA, or sorry, Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, Power Automate, and even UiPath. No other platform on the market has anything like this. And it's going to be a game changer in how people design and build automations. Because if your organization is like many of the ones we talked to today, you don't just have one RPA platform. You probably have multiple, or you're looking at multiple. And so this idea of automation design is something that needs to be generic. It needs to be common across any RPA approach or any design approach when it comes to automation. In addition to COM and the incredible level of detail and precision it brings to the automation design and development, digital blueprints are loaded with other capabilities. They provide a centralized repository of this automation design information that can be referenced and reused. It's never out of date either. Unlike documents, which, as I mentioned, go out of date as soon as they start to get built. They have a highly configurable review and approval workflow built into Blueprint. So these digital blueprints can be easily consumed by stakeholders, and feedback can be gathered in real time. Another totally differentiating capability is to transform these process models within your digital blueprint into a myriad of other value-added types of things. For example, being able to automatically generate a set of test cases off a digital blueprint, or a backlog of user stories for their teams that need to have that backlog consumable, because that's how they track and manage their work. But digital blueprints aren't just for your initial automation design and development. All of that detailed process information and dependencies that we capture provides the basis for an ongoing management of an automation across its lifecycle, helping you not only to build the bot, but help maintain and manage that bot. We leverage that information to provide comprehensive analytics and impact analysis reporting, so that you can actively prevent outages when things change, which they invariably do. This leads to automations that have increased productivity and substantially reduced total cost of ownership, because high quality automations built with digital blueprints don't result in endless value training or break-fix cycles. And lastly, there's one other use case for Blueprint that I also want to highlight here. Due to its connection with the RPA platforms and these integrations that we've established, Blueprint also has a unique capability to really support the migration of automations across platform. We can reverse engineer a digital blueprint from any existing automation and then export it to a new target platform, essentially allowing us to extract the automation design from one system and move it to another. This dramatically lowers the switching costs to enable you to move from one platform of your choice, or to simply consolidate automations if you already have multiple platforms. This is a huge challenge in the industry, because anytime an organization has to do this, they basically have to rebuild these automations from scratch. But to sum it all up, digital blueprints are a substantial leap forward in RPA design and development. We can radically accelerate bot development. For many customers, we're helping to deliver their automations in half the time, cutting a 3-month timeline of automation delivery into 6 weeks, which allows the team to not only build them quicker in less time, with less effort, but also deliver more automations in a single year, in a single quarter, or that time frame that they're going for. And if you want to make the leap to another RPA platform, we can also dramatically lower that switching cost as well, up to 80% time and cost savings to drive that bot migration, as well as being able to just reduce the break-fix cycles by at least 50%. So these are huge time savings and huge value savings that organizations have been able to realize, and ultimately driving an increased ROI and efficiency for their RPA centers of excellence and the RPA programs at their company. So I'd now like to jump into the product to take you through a detailed overview and a demonstration of how Blueprint works, and specifically how these digital blueprints are used. So here we are in Blueprint. Blueprint is a web-based, cloud-hosted solution. So right out of the gate, you're not working in files. You're not working on your local desktop, saving things and sharing them around. You're working in a web-based solution. What we're going to do is we're starting in an invoicing example here. And I'm going to actually import a captured process that we pulled in from Fortress IQ. So in this case here, I'm going to reach in. We have a extract invoice process we pulled in from Fortress IQ. And here we have a digital blueprint for this extract invoice process that we captured and we're now automating. This digital blueprint replaces the PDD, or the large document that folks use today. And it completely digitizes the approach, which will have a direct impact on lowering the cost of development and deploying, and you'll see why. Without Blueprint, we would have had to capture all the specifications and the design in a big document before essentially throwing it over the wall to IT for development. And while they slowly unpack all the information needed to start development. But Blueprint also gives you the opportunity to easily model these automations, model processes and automations directly by creating these digital blueprints. So for example here, if I take this, and we actually have a built-in designer. So for example here, if I'm going to quickly create a new process around extracting the invoice. So here's our blank canvas. Now we can quickly and easily define a new process by adding tasks, adding steps. We can even toggle, for example, some details with the system step button to get more granular and actually explain how the UI works. So we can add detailed screens and interactions. But in consideration of time, we'll go back to the process we captured from what we imported. And of course, if you'd like to see how you can easily build digital blueprints from scratch in detail, by all means, please reach out to us for a demo. We'd love to show you this in its full power of Blueprint over a call. Now, back to this original digital blueprint around extracting an invoice. Here's where we can optimize this process with all the capabilities that digital blueprints deliver. Based on previous automations and the production bots we've already cataloged, the system is recommending certain policies, regulations, and rules and other dependencies that might be missed and apply for this particular automation. This is an example of some of the intelligent recommendations that are built in and the dependency mapping that you don't get in other automation design solutions on the market. Ultimately, if you're trying to do this in a document or any other way, you have to just know these things. Here, Blueprint is actually telling you everything you've already done in Blueprint that relates to this extract invoice process, and you might want to reuse it. This intelligent assistance reinforces a strong tracing strategy to ensure that no dependencies are missed or overlooked, which significantly reduces the bot outages and then the need for maintenance downtime. All these dependencies are linked directly to this digital blueprint and are used to quickly report and identify the impact of changes that happen when this is live in production, which will contribute to the proactive change management approach that Blueprint enables, which we'll also show you here. Most importantly, we can automate these digital blueprints by generating a bot package and sending it directly into any of the major RPA platforms. In this case, we're actually going to send it over to Blue Prism. This allows us to accelerate the transition and handoff to development and really remove this manual need for PDDs and documents. Again, reducing the effort of RPA development and deployment while producing high quality, resilient automations because of the precise context digital blueprints deliver. So here we're just going to send it over to Blue Prism. It just takes a minute to upload. Now here is the generated bot package in Blue Prism. The process flow serves as a baseline bot or a bot skeleton that developers use to get started. In other words, without Blueprint, an RPA developer would first have to interpret what exactly needs to be built by digesting a large PDD and recreating all of this from scratch by hand. This is how Blueprint provides a head start on development and not only reduces the time it takes to develop a bot by 50%, but it also leads to higher quality development because there's nothing lost in translation. No one is going to misinterpret what we're doing and what we're working on. In addition to the process flow, the digital blueprint also sends over all of the links to all the dependencies, rules, regulations for easy access and transparency. This ensures that they have precise guidance for the bot the business wants to be built. Without Blueprint, these would be buried in a PDD somewhere, and it'd be very easy to lose track and miss altogether. Now, these digital blueprints, while being able to be exported and sent over into the RPA platforms in a bot package, we can also automate these digital blueprints into a variety of other places. They can also be used to automatically generate suites of test cases and test scripts, which can then be used for development or UAT type testing, further reducing the efforts on development and deployment, and really keeping the total cost of ownership for RPA at a minimum. But digital blueprints can also automate the backlog of user stories that are needed to develop the bot. Here we've generated a backlog of user stories for this particular automation, and we synchronize it directly with Jira. So as the team now uses Jira to work and deliver those automations and work through the detailed steps, as they update those stories, they're going to be updated and reflected back in Blueprint as well. And more importantly, a business analyst or a product owner didn't have to sit down, create a PDD, and then recreate all that as a backlog of stories. This is now automated. This is how we streamline and truly digitize the automation process. Now, if we fast forward to after this bot has been completed, tested, and deployed to production, Blueprint continues to deliver value throughout the life of that new automation, helping to streamline changes and ensure continued compliance. And this is where Blueprint enables proactive change management. Here, for example, you have notifications of the things that have changed that might affect automations. So these notifications are summarized at the top in these different priorities and categories, and you can use them as filters. So for example, let's say you're only interested in certain changes to regulations, and of those you only care about the ones that are of high severity. This filters down to maybe a single set of regulations, or in this case just a single item we have to look at. And with a click, Blueprint can identify and show you exactly what's going to be impacted or affected through this impact analysis. This takes you to a live impact analysis view. Without Blueprint, performing an impact analysis like this will be a piecemeal practice where you essentially need to manually isolate each bot that might be impacted by the change and then dig into the code and understand what the implications are. Here you can see that a change as part of the regulation will potentially impact these 5 automations, including the one that we've been focused on. At this point, maybe we'd like to alert owners of the automation that they need to take action before the bot fails and is subject to hours of investigation while it sits idly losing business value that it's supposed to be delivering on. In this case here, we can quickly send an alert and notify the owners or the team of this particular item that's being changed and those automations that are going to be impacted. This tells them that they have to do something. They have to act on this, again, proactively. Instead of waiting for a fire to pop up, we can actually be a lot more proactive around how do we manage these changes. And now that the owners have been alerted, Blueprint provides the most typical way to coordinate this through email. And while it's definitely not the most efficient today, letting people know, it helps give people notification that these things are being changed. And more importantly, it lets them know that they can quickly come into Blueprint and look at what that change is. So in this case here, that stakeholder can log into Blueprint based on that notification, see exactly what's being modified and how it's going to impact their particular automation. This identifies the regulation that's changed, which automation they need to look at, any associated comments, and with everything linked, they can go explore the regulatory change to see exactly what it is, and even navigate to the bot in Blue Prism right to the affected part of that automation. So to sum up what we've covered today, paper-based, error-prone documents like PDDs are ultimately leading to low-quality automations that need constant maintenance because they produce missed requirements and inevitably lead to more bot outages. That means that RPA programs are busy putting out fires instead of focusing on building more digital workers to really scale their automation programs. Digital blueprints effectively replace PDDs and deliver higher quality automations because of the level of detail and precision that each digital blueprint contains. They're accelerated and improved development because of the rich context in each digital blueprint and their ability to be automatically exported into your RPA technology, giving those developers all the accuracy and context that they need right at their fingertips. There's increased value throughout the bot lifecycle and with proactive change management. And this is possible with Blueprint's instant impact analysis that I showed you. It's allowing you to predict the impact of a change and with the precision and immediate coordination to prevent that from happening. And last but not least, there's greater returns from your automation programs and more business value delivered due to less outages, accelerated design, and ultimately higher quality automations. So for a limited time, we're offering some free custom evaluations and workshops to really show you specific proof of value for your RPA programs and how digital blueprints and Blueprints Enterprise Automation Suite can save you time, cost, and mitigate risk. If you're interested, just visit the link on the screen, blueprintsys.com/get-started, and we'd love to take you through a deeper understanding. And with that, I want to thank everyone for hanging out with us today and having us go through this. And I want to open up for any questions or comments at this time, so we can take that on.
Great, thank you, Matt. As Matt mentioned, we'd like to now open up the floor to audience questions. If you'd like to ask a question, please feel free to pop it into the questions tab in the control panel on the right side of your screen. We have a few that have come in throughout the presentation, so I'll get started with those. The first two questions are from Rebecca, and the questions are, how many customers use RPA for change management builds? And also, how many customers use your product for change enablement processes?
Great questions, Rebecca. So in terms of the number of customers that use RPA for change management builds, I don't have a direct number on that because each of them is kind of a different area. What we see with certain customers is we tend to start with certain RPA programs in like finance or HR or sometimes IT. So there's definitely obviously different places that are approached. So it's a percentage. I don't know to what extent. I think more of the IT specific use cases are probably in the 50% range. So that might fall in there. So in terms of how many customers use our product for change enablement processes, again, it's the same percentage. So when it comes to managing change, and let's say, and I'm not sure if you're referring to a change enablement process you want to automate, Blueprint has obviously a very broad perspective as a design space for actually designing any automations from finance automations to HR to maybe change enablement processes. Being able to model those out and design them in Blueprint is just the same as modeling any type of processes. But Blueprint itself is also instrumental in a lot of change management practices. And that's really more of how do we process change from the business that may impact certain automations that are in production, or in some of our customers that are using us in more of an IT specific role, how do changes from the business impact certain IT solutions and technologies. So I hope that helped give some insight on those, and definitely if you like to understand a little bit more of what we can do around these topics around change enablement, change management, automations, I encourage you to reach out, and we'd love to take you through a deeper demonstration.
Great, thanks, Matt. We have another question here from Joanne. I see that digital blueprints can be pushed into RPA tools with integrations to those RPA tools, but does that integration work in reverse as well? Can I take a bot that I have in my Blue Prism, for instance, and get it into Blueprint?
So that is a great question, and yes, you can. So we mentioned it briefly when we talked about migrations, but Blueprint essentially has an import capability. So you can take bots you have from Blue Prism, UiPath, AA, or even Power Automate, for example, and import them into Blueprint, where you can either re-engineer them, optimize them, convert them to a digital blueprint to improve that bot's lifecycle, or even just catalog them. We see a lot of organizations that use Blueprint not only to build their new bots, but to catalog their existing automations so they can start to manage and maintain them. And then obviously, because those bots are cataloged in Blueprint, they now are able to be used by intelligent recommendations and be able to be reused. So those connected bots can be not only, those imported automations, those ones from production, can not only be managed better because they're mapped to dependencies and be able to be mapped to dependencies, but they can even be reused for new automation. So long-winded way to say absolutely.
Great. We have another one here from Mark. How can RPA programs limit bot errors and RPA downtime that's preventing them from scaling and realizing better returns?
So as I mentioned throughout this presentation, the solution is to find a better way to plan, design, and really communicate, automation work other than using manual paper-based documents and documentation like PDDs. And that's because those are error prone and they lead to brittle bots downstream. A solution like Blueprint's Enterprise Automation Suite that slides into the middle of your automation tool chain is the key to really delivering these high quality automations and maximizing your return. An intuitive collaborative automation design environment like Blueprint that prioritizes things like visibility, seamless dependency mapping, for example, even proactive change management is precisely what allows RPA programs to deliver just more robust, resilient automations that ultimately drive and maximize the value and enable the scale. So there's multiple layers to it, but it really starts with this idea of information. And by putting information in a repository and putting it into a purpose-built place that really helps manage it and cultivate it and curate it throughout a life cycle, we're able to ensure that the result of all this information, which is the bot, is a better quality product than what we're doing today manually and in a very error-prone and tedious fashion.
Great. We had another question come in from Rebecca. The question is, can I use it to automate the manual process of building an infrastructure implementation documentation?
Yes. So use to automate the manual process of building an implementation documentation. So yes. So where Blueprint fits in is definitely when it comes to taking a manual process and starting to automate it. Blueprint is definitely part of that equation. Now, Blueprint itself, just to be clear, it is not an automation. It's not an automation tool like an RPA tool, meaning it's not going to run a bot. It's not going to be able to run an automation. What it's going to help you do is capture and design out and capture all the information around that automation that you're trying to build. In some cases, those things you want to automate are going to be delivered with RPA technologies. In other cases, you want to automate those with, custom code or scripts, or even getting into things like low code, no code. So absolutely, there is definitely a component of what you're doing that Blueprint can absolutely assist with and bring some better speed, clarity, and efficiency to that process.
Great. We have another question here. This one's from Philip. Can you explain how Blueprint is able to reduce the cost of migration by so much?
Absolutely. So migration has traditionally been so expensive and uncommon as a result because there's no portability in the RPA ecosystem. And this is to be expected. Automation anywhere isn't designed the same way UiPath is, or Blue Prism or Power Automate. So you can't take a file from one system and send it to another. And therefore, you can't really export a bot from one platform to another, and the RPA tools aren't really in the market to do that. Each RPA tool speaks its own language, meaning that there's a long list of incompatible actions, commands, variables. And that means, that a bot needs to be built again in a new tool if you want it to work. So essentially, an entire digital workforce needs to be rebuilt from scratch when you want to migrate. With Blueprint, that massive manual effort and expense is removed. So what we're able to do is reduce the cost so much because of this common object model we've developed and that integration. There's kind of two levels to it. We've done these, we've actually created these integrations and this common model by working with the leading RPA vendors. So when bots are ingested into Blueprint, what we do is we re-engineer and convert them into a digital blueprint. So that essentially extracts the design of that bot from the code into a digital blueprint. And then we convert those steps into a common object model. So we map any step we can into the common model framework that we put together. And because this common model we developed and these integrations have been created with partnership with those RPA vendors, those digital blueprints can now be further optimized and then fed into a new technology. So the whole idea is Blueprint becomes this kind of interchange format, this way of, translating one technology into another, this common language, if you will.
Let's see, we have another one here from Thomas. Thomas asks, we're currently looking at migrating to Microsoft Power Automate. Does your migration solution support switching to Power Automate?
Great question. So the short answer here is yes. Blueprint has a bilateral integration with Power Automate or Microsoft Power Automate, desktop specifically, and even cloud for that matter. So you can ingest your bots from the RPA tool you currently use, convert them into digital blueprints, and then feed them into Power Automate.
Awesome. And let's see, we have time for a couple more. Let's see, we have one more here. This one's from Francis. You mentioned that Blueprint is able to automatically generate user stories. We use Jira to manage the development work on our bots. Does Blueprint provide an integration that would enable us to sync those user stories with Jira?
Absolutely, great question. So we touched on it briefly during the presentation. Blueprint does indeed provide an integration with Jira, in addition to many more ALM or even work management systems like Azure DevOps, Rally, version 1, I think that was called Digital AI. So the user stories we automatically generate can absolutely be synced with Jira or any other technology, ALM tool or backlog management tool your organization might use to drive downstream development. So, and it's a bi-directional integration. So in the same way that we can synchronize, generate stories and synchronize them from Blueprint downstream, we can also synchronize any story updates and changes back upstream and back and forth between those technologies.
Great. Let's see, we'll take two more questions. We have one here from Sophia asking, you also mentioned that digital blueprints generate and contain functional tests. Can you elaborate a little?
Absolutely, of course. So from the process at the core of your digital blueprint, you can actually automatically generate some high quality comprehensive test plans and cases for that automation. Essentially, Blueprint takes the process with all the different branches and conditions and different paths and permutations, turns them into different test cases or test passes, ways to kind of walk through that process, and then takes each step and turns it into an input or an expected result. And that really kind of can map very nicely to things like a UAT type of activity, where instead of having someone create those test cases from scratch, you can generate them off of digital blueprints. But secondly, Blueprint also auto-generates things like Gherkin feature files. So once automatically generated, things like those Gherkin feature file test cases can also be synced with test suites. These high-level test cases can also be synced with test suites that you use with integrations that are available to really accelerate and improve your QA process for automation with your dev teams downstream. So essentially, think of any times in your process where someone had to sit down and write test cases manually by hand, or had to read through requirements documents or user stories and create tests. Blueprint automates that, can help you automate and accelerate that whole handoff from, again, design into testing.
Great, and this is our final question here, and it's coming to us from Alex. How long does it take to implement Blueprint in an organization, including the learning curve, and what's the time to value?
Fantastic. So the Blueprint Enterprise platform itself is designed to really be intuitive and accessible to all stakeholders. From the ground up, it maps very clean to what people have done for years in Word, Excel, Visio, PowerPoint. So it's easy to use whether you're a business or a technical user. There's also built-in onboarding and an interactive, contextual help that guides people through Blueprint and helps accelerate the learning curve. And we also offer starter packs with unlimited users, really designed to get new customers using the enterprise platform, producing digital blueprints, and seeing a return on their investment very quickly. Within the first 2 weeks, we actually get people onboarded and up and running. In terms of time to value, as I mentioned in one of the final slides of my presentation, customers on average experience about a 5x return on their investment, and that's usually within the first 6 months. So once they get through a few automation programs, they're really starting to actually ramp up and see that increase in that ROI from their overall bot availability, RPA uptime, and even just the increase with which they can deliver their automations.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. That was our final question. I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your day to join us. We'll be in touch with a recording of this session in the next few days. In the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out if you want to learn more about how Blueprint can help you achieve RPA at scale. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.